for us, so we are very happy. And we're very happy to have you here. It's cold weather outside, even colder as in Greenland. And it's really nice that you found time and energy to come here. So this is how our first events looked. And when I said anniversary, it's 10-year anniversary from our first story night. So we don't do them that regularly, so it always feels like a special event with special people. And exactly 10 years ago, it also was a quite cold winter. And some people have changed, some looks have changed, but I think the spirit of adventure and spontaneity, yeah, I always mix those up, still stayed the same. This is how we looked 10 years ago. It was a small community house in Old Riga. We grilled some shashliks while we were chatting, and right here we are in a cinema, so it's really nice to grow a little bit in these 10 years. And of course, we wouldn't be there without all of you, people who have been the most spontaneous, most active, and have made these adventures possible in our organization, Movement Spontaneous. When we map where we have been, we usually kind of use this large Google map, and we tag every location we want to go, and there are a lot of criteria. Some of you have been active mappers, and you have seen this map, and there have been a lot of events, but I always like to switch those tags out and only keep the trails. And even not all of the trails have been completed if you look at Spain. But for example, here up in China, there's like a few-day expedition that was very hard, but in the map it's only 1 or 2 pixels, and you are like, those pixels took a lot of effort to put on that map. So there is still a lot of places to go and a lot of unexplored locations. And what you will hear today, for those who thought that this is a movie, we are very sorry. It's a story night, but you'll have some video content, and we hope you will be entertained. So basically, we'll do a short introduction, which we are almost through, and then we will talk about the key destinations, which is Oman, English Channel, Norway, Sweden, a little bit of France, Greenland, and maybe some other surprise references. But structurally, maybe mostly we look at kind of destinations, then we will look at preparations, adventure themselves, and in the very end of the presentation, we will have equipment and kind of like Q&A where you can ask questions. So if you have some questions, kind of note them down, and in the end of the presentation, you will be able to ask them all. Why the event is called Blue Therapy? So kind of a while ago, I strolled the internet, and from time to time, this term popped up. And usually it was associated with sailboats and people kind of going in these cruises and experiencing sea and water and getting some health benefit from that. So our idea was you can also get blue therapy by having a packraft or just going on a hike by the seaside. And I hope that through seeing this presentation today, you will also get some blue therapy from all the images and videos from these destinations. So the part 1 is basically training for Greenland. It started as a joke because when we were like very, very young, or much younger than now, when we went in some crazy destinations, for example, in Norway, we were in winter and we had like little crocs and not very much prepared. And the Norwegians were like, hey guys, you don't look very prepared. We were like, no, that's okay. We are training for Greenland. And it always worked. They're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But when we train for Greenland, it's more kind of going with packrafts, as hiking there is a bit challenging. So structurally, those first adventures were kind of, we always wanted to go somewhere farther with boats. And we started with Åland Islands quite a few years ago. We mapped it out. It was a nice archipelago, a lot of small islands. And the idea was to go around them. And we were quite lucky back then because the Tallink was still offering regular services back and forth from Riga. Now it's a bit trickier. And basically, the plan was to do it in 1 month and go around these islands. And here you can see how it looks from above. I would still say it's one of my favorite destinations, maybe because it was our first long distance boating expedition. It wasn't a packraft. We basically took these plastic kayaks on a ferry and brought them over and did kayaking around the islands. So there you can see our little tent on the rocks. Andres there in the sleeping bag in the morning. It always felt in Åland Islands in the morning when you go swimming like kind of like a stone pool, because it kind of goes slowly in It wasn't even that slippery, and it warms up during the day. So very nice experience. It was also one of the first like large-scale maps which we did and printed out. Back then, we still used screenshots from Google Maps, which we glued together on Photoshop and tried to get these maps working. And what is very interesting is that I have heard that people who climb mountains, they say that after some height, it doesn't matter how high you are. You're just, you're either scared or not scared anymore. So for us, every time we left this kind of place where you can still see the bottom of the sea, it felt really, really dangerous. And I think still every time when you go in a deeper water, you don't know how deep it is, but you feel that it is too deep. And especially when you are in a boat that is paddle boat. So here you can see the Tallink and our team in one of the kayaks. We kind of did like a tour where we started with a larger event where there are more people. Then they all went back to Latvia, and we stayed in Åland Islands with Andra for a few weeks. Went around, and at that point we also kind of validated this concept that the best packrafting places are places with a lot of small rocks, islands, and probably not that many trees, because every time we reach some island with more trees or more ponds, especially in the evening, you could hear this like it's like hundreds of mosquitoes around you instantly. So this is one of the local houses which you actually can use for free. No, there are not that many, but some islands have them. Some of them have already fallen into disrepair. There were some resupply points, but not that many. So basically, you would have some cafes. It was also the little bit around COVID era, so some places were closed. It was really empty, so we didn't see any more sailboats, and we basically spent these few weeks almost completely alone. This was one of the best cafes. We met like these old aunties just baking pancakes, and you go in and you pay with cash and write in the register how much you have eaten. And this is one of these houses where you can stay. And probably the hardest thing was every time you had to carry this heavy boat out of the water, kind of drag it on the rocks. And also for the tent, not always can you find a place where you can put in the poles, so you need to find the rocks to kind of secure it. But for the views, of course, I would say Åland Islands is still one of our favorite places, except for the mosquitoes. So if this picture had sound, yeah, sometimes that's why we take pictures, because you couldn't stay still long enough to have a good video. You just need to change very quickly, jump in a tent, and sleep it over. So then this is already 3-year jump. So that was 2020. Now we are at 2023. And we finally got to Packraft. So Zaig is actually here. She was our inspiration, showing that lightweight boats are quite transportable and quite safe for adventures. So we were quite afraid to try them out in larger expedition. It was around Christmas time, and we took them to Italy, where some of our friends live. And we basically went to some of the lakes and tried them out. How quickly can we set it up? How safe we feel in them? And tried some different packrafting routes. Probably one of the best was in this Garda Lake around the castle. It's also probably one of the nicest qualities about packrafting. You can take your boat and you're almost like a military, you can go anywhere, no one can really stop you. Of course, you have to check some regulations, but basically there is a lot of options that open up since you have a packraft, because when you hike, you kind of have a river. Maybe you can try, paddling, swimming over, but it always involves some kind of danger and changing. But with packraft, you can almost go everywhere when there is water. So this was a nice experience of trying that out. So if you're ever in Italy, I think it's a great place to try out some packrafting. Although lakes do come with challenges. Some people who have packrafted with us in lakes, and if the weather is not the best, then it can be a bit challenging. So for example, on this lake, you don't have that many small islands. We also tried the equipment, so we are using some carbon paddles. We really like these red safety vests or flotation devices, because you can store the equipment easily, and phones. That was the test, and then we were ready for the first challenging, but also there's like this, I don't know if you have heard, it comes from Japan, it's this term musagi, which is kind of like this adventure, and it needs to have 50-50 chance. Like if the chance of you completing the adventure successfully is higher than that, then it doesn't count as a challenge, and you are not, you have to have this fear in you that it actually sounds scary to do it. And Oman did that on many qualities. We knew that it wouldn't be that cold there, but we also knew we haven't ever been in Oman, so that was a challenge. And also, of course, the terrain itself. So you can see here, basically, it's this region in the northern Oman is called sometimes as Norway of Arabia, because these cliff formations look quite like fjords. And we tried to map a route, and we always thought that maybe that we can, like, in case something bad happens, we can kind of climb over the peaks. So actually, this point here is a very important one, because the route actually went over it. If we couldn't get over there, it would mean that we would probably need to call for a boat. We did have these satellite communicators, but we really hoped we would not need to use them for that reason. We did, of course, check the terrain maps, and we tried to zoom in satellite how close you can. But in reality, you never know, like the cliffs change, and the slope did look pretty challenging. And so here you can see the further route, so it kind of mirrors the coastline. And if you would zoom out, then there is Iran up there. And that was also an interesting experience, which we'll get to. So when we arrived, we drove through Dubai and kind of to this place where we started the trip, the harbor. And the guy actually who took us there was also a researcher, so he was also researching tourism. So this is quite interesting for me also as a researcher. And we started packing, and of course some people pay attention. Like you can see here, we got a lot of water. I think we were carrying at some point almost 50 liters, and it did come in useful, because in this trip we basically didn't have much places to resupply, or one or two places. And then we started our trip. Probably from the just feeling of being on the water, it's still unbeatable. Like it's so remote. There is only like a few tourist boats. The beach is actually, this one is one of the cleanest beaches. So that's how you know it's really remote, because everything that the sea carries gets left there. So some beaches are pretty trashy, but the feeling that you are completely on your own was quite freeing. And here you can also see these packrafts that we used. So here is one in the water, of course, and here are some of the cliffs when we go around these edges. So you can see also that the tides weren't that crazy, but one of the challenges was that it got dark rather quickly. So there were some sections where we needed to packraft during the night, and being in ocean at night with the sharks is always an interesting experience. But the sunsets were really good, and the best part about every morning is that one thing is that the sun wakes you up, but once you get out of these fjords and you start packrafting in the open waters, you always see these motorboats that every morning go from Iran and carry these cigarettes and alcohol and, and stuff like that they sell to locals in exchange for goods. So we always felt kind of really like, should we take photos or maybe not? And the best part is that, of course, there's also like these military infrastructure elements from time to time, and like these boats go past, but it feels like there is some balance, and we kind of felt safe, I suppose. We did check, there was one guy who did a similar adventure before, so there are a lot of rules and regulations. For example, in this trip, we didn't take drones, because basically you're not supposed to take them with you in Oman if you don't have really very specific permits. So we did do that due diligence part. This is the city of Kumse, and we really wanted to reach it because it was like our only guaranteed resupply point, but it's also a very interesting place. You can't get there on foot. You can't also get there on a vehicle. So the only way to reach it is by water, and the locals use special like fishing methods. They kind of live very traditionally, and basically they're in this place only during winter. So we're also there in winter time. In summer, it just gets so hot that basically everyone leaves. And even in winter, you can see that this bridge doesn't really serve a purpose. But of course, if some rain comes, then the whole city kind of almost floods. And this central river is also used as a highway where goats and people live together. So here you can see some motorboats where we arrived. This is the local restaurant where you kind of go around and ask where the owner is. And then we try to go through it. It's always kind of tricky, should you film there or not, and do people feel comfortable? So we kind of try to use these 360 cameras, which are not that obtrusive. And here you can see us going deeper inside. Basically, there is interesting track. It's not like an official trail, but you can kind of climb around these mountains and go deeper. And then if you climb high enough, you can actually see this city from top. Maybe city is a generous term, but basically this is how they live. And it was probably like top 2 places we have seen like that remotely, where people have their own community. And there were a lot of goats, of course, everywhere. It's like you sit in a cafe and the goat comes in and you're like, hey, should I give the goat some food too? So these are the locals which came out to greet us. It was pretty nice to meet them and say hello. And you can also see like the tides kind of go back and down, but it was not the most crazy tides we have experienced yet. Then we packed up. We were lucky to get water. We were also able to recharge our devices. We did have some solar panels, but they were not. We didn't need to fully rely on them. So here we are on this crossing point where you can basically climb over. But we were very careful with this trip. We thought we didn't know how many kilometers we can do per day. So we actually kind of undershot our expectations. We could actually do the long trail around and we didn't need to climb over. If we had to, it would be probably quite a challenging climb, but doable. So here you can see us packrafting at night. So in Oman, we did do quite a lot. Like it isn't that cold, but you do feel a little bit scarier when you are out on the boat at night. Here you can see in the morning, and this is the shot at night, like a little bit waves. And why you can't really choose is because a lot of times there are not that many places where you can camp, so you have to basically reach the next entry point. And we usually map them before on satellite, and then we kind of check the wind direction, and that's probably the biggest use we also have for these satellite communicators. We just check every day what is the forecast, and from that we do kind of a prognosis how far we are expected to get that day, and then you start to kind of get a little bit comfortable with the risk. This is the best part. So on the last day, we are packrafting back on this other island where we started, but from the other side, and we noticed that there is something shining in the water. And actually, we always heard rumors that there are places where you can get that. Yeah, with every packrafting kind of movement, you see this water lighting up with this bioluminescent algae. Yeah, it felt like in some Avatar movie or something like that. I think there is a story right there. Yeah. Yeah, and it's good to also have covers for the boats when you leave in a cafe or somewhere else, like or just leave the boats open, so you don't never know who will climb in them. One of the times we got peeing foxes. Like peeing foxes will return, but probably the most traumatic camping was because we don't always make the tent. Sometimes if the weather is nice and there is no insects around, then we don't build a tent. And yeah, one morning we wake up and there is a fox sitting and peeing on the sleeping bag. so from that moment on, we really started building tents more. Although it does take some extra time, and it's some time to set it off in the morning, etc. So here is a place where we lost the satellite communicator. So Anna's parents started getting worried. But luckily we received it back again. Like Oman is one of these places, like there are not many places where satellite communication can sometimes be hampered. Like it's still allowed to use it, but you never know if it will actually work. And I think it's the same with WhatsApp. So for example, WhatsApp calls didn't work. In Signal, you also had some issues. So you really have to check local regulations for communication. But yeah, it can be tricky. But mostly our satellite communicator worked, but here we had some challenges to get it working. And here are some of the cliffs. It was pretty nice to climb up. But it was interesting, we didn't see that many birds. Like there were a few, but mostly it's kind of like really remote feeling. I think it's quite, in a way, very similar to Greenland, because there also we didn't have that many wildlife. But this was much hotter, of course. But from the ground and rocks and everything else, it's just, a little bit hotter, but otherwise quite comparable experience. And probably one of the most beautiful mornings ever. So for the food, we mostly relied on these freeze-dried meals. And this is also the last camping spot where we made them camp, and then we returned to the base. And here already we are at the Oman sign, and this is kind of this wavy road where you have to go around to get back to the main city. So here is the goat that wanted coffee in the morning. Here are some of these beaches, and this is the setup we use for charging. So it's quite a lot of these solar panels bind together to get around like 50 watts of charging power. And basically that's how it looks when you kind of do the camping at night and try to pick up the boats. Yeah, I would say like this place, if you ever go somewhere, the people are very friendly and the tourism is very low and they're very welcoming, although you have to be mindful of some requirements that you can't use some communication devices and stuff like that. And here is, I think there will be, yeah, here we go. The meals, that is probably the best part. So when you order in Oman food, you always have to check if it's for sharing or for yourself. So we did have some times when we thought we are ordering for each of us, but it was like probably the largest meal we had to ever eat. When we were back in the city. So we had a week left over, not a week, but like 5 or 6 days. And that's where we thought, hey, maybe we should also go and do packrafting in Dubai. It was not originally planned. And actually from the saltwater, one of our satellite communicators kind of got a little bit tricky to work with, but we had a backup one, so we thought it's safe enough. And basically the last 3 or 4 days, instead of staying in hotel, or like, I don't know, like we just couldn't find anything to do in Dubai. It felt like kind of techie and like, at least with outdoor equipment and, big backpacks and stuff like that. So we thought like, hey, maybe let's do a challenge and try to packraft around Dubai. So we started in the city center. There is this canal, kind of in a way, a little bit like in Riga, that you can go through all the Riga, just bigger one. And we started from the modern Dubai, and the idea was that we go back from the old Dubai. And the modern Dubai, in the center, there are actually some sanctuary for wildlife, etc. So the first part was actually like you packraft to a park. Of course, everywhere there is closed entry. So if you wanted to access that place from the city, it would be much harder. And also you couldn't a lot of times get out because like every pier is kind of protected, or there are some gates in front of you. But while you stay on water, it's safe. So in a way, although you are in city, you feel the same way as when you packraft along these high cliffs. So this is the first day. We are already kind of getting through this more urban area, and our aim was to get to this. If you ever have seen Dubai, there is this a world of islands place where every country has its own island. So we really thought, oh, we can, camp in Germany or something like that, because we heard and Googled that like most of these islands are empty and people don't buy them. But yeah, we didn't really manage to get in, but it will be a different part of the story. So here is where we are kind of turning back around after a few days and going back. So you of course have to be mindful of the ships. And this was kind of a hard crossing. And probably the most beautiful part for packrafting was this old Dubai part. So already closer to the end of the journey, where we went to the old city part. And here are like these 360 videos. So we started from this shipyard, which is basically like some old ships which get built or repaired, or some of them were half drowned from the city part. And then we went further through this old, but the natural reserve. And yeah, I didn't mention, but in the city itself, so we were packrafting, and you kind of sometimes need to go to the toilet, or you maybe want to get an ice cream. And here we noticed that there are ladders, since it's like basically the center of Dubai. And we were like, hey, Anna, maybe you want to go and get an ice cream for us, or apple or something? And she was like, yeah, why not? Let's try getting out. So here you can see her climbing on the ladder. Then she kind of opened the gate, got through, started walking, and looked around for the closest supermarket. And it's interesting, you can't see the boats from the city level because they are just like, there's a huge drop. And here Anna is already in the shop, so she picks up. Now I'm thinking, yeah, filming in Dubai, it's nice that you don't need to hold the cameras, so these 360 ones are pretty convenient. So here she buys the apples, and then she goes back, and we continue the moving. So there's a lot of parts in Dubai where you have like techno music playing very loudly, so you kind of float through that in your packraft, and it's a very interesting experience. And here already the night is kind of coming closer. We are trying to reach these Palm Islands. So there was a point which was hard to film, but we were completely at night, and like reaching these Palm Islands. And then we really want to like get out of the packraft, rest our legs a bit. And you look at these rocks. So every one of these rocks is covered with these sea urchins, if you know, these spiky little balls. And you're like, okay, let's packraft a little bit forward. Maybe there they wouldn't be. And it's like everywhere, and you can't get out. And so we had to actually, like, probably it was the largest amount of time we have spent in a boat. We managed to get like closer to the morning, but we almost spent the whole night packrafting around. So quite a challenging experience. And for camping, of course, camping in Dubai is really, really hard. The good news is that like no being foxes attacked us, but like these are the places where you basically put your packraft somewhere. You probably don't necessarily build a tent, but like kind of have a tarp and take a very long nap. And you tactically look for places where people wouldn't come. But of course, like this is not a thing that is probably something that should be repeated. This is this old Dubai section, so pretty nice. There is some ship traffic, but not nothing crazy. It's some tourist boats, and then you get closer in the market. So they're really nice. There's like Starbucks cafe, and you could, stop and get out. But they're like, no, there's a fine if you get out. While you are on water, it's kind of fine. It's not counted as a ship, but once you get out, then they say, no, you can't get out, we will call police, but you can be in the water. So it was basically very hard to get out, but while you're in water, pretty beautiful views. And this is the full route which we did around Dubai. So probably not an experience I would ever do again, but I think this is the most tragic point. Like you can see us there, we have reached these beautiful islands. You can even see them, the silhouettes, and there's like literally at every entrance there's a police boat. Just no, you don't have a permit to go inside. Like it's middle of the night, I couldn't see us, the waves were big, etc. You're in a tiny packraft, but the police boat also is like a tiny boat, but just with a motor. But they're very polite. They're not like, but they're just like, no entrance here. Then we tried the other one. It's like, nope, not here again. And then you can see where we kind of stopped over and tried camping later. So after that, we went to France to continue trying more challenging adventures. So the France is probably a misleading term. It's more this English Channel part. So it's still, I think the correct name is Brittany. I always mix them up. I think I wrote Normandy there. But basically we went to Lannion, and then the plan was to go around the coastline. There are also like these small islands. It's one of the places with the largest tides in the world, and it was like this full moon. I think it was actually the red moon, so it was like one of the strongest tides of the strongest time. It was quite challenging, so we looked at weather forecast quite a lot. The temperature wasn't the warmest, so it was kind of similar with what to expect in Greenland, maybe a little bit warmer. And it was also kind of the first time for us to pack everything up and go through multiple transportation times, because we had to take a train, and then we had to transfer in an airport. With Oman, it was more like we flew. We got this Oman taxi guys who just took us from the airport. But here we were more like just normal tourists who go in an airplane. It was Air Baltic or Ryanair. We just pack our bags, then we walk to a train, then we go with the train. So it was kind of more like a normal adventure, but also closer to what you would expect. In a Greenland. The area there is really nice to packraft in. Of course, you really have to be mindful with the wind. So our strategy usually is, if it's a windy and dangerous place, it needs to have a lot of islands. Then you can kind of hug and curve around them. So here you can see Elias. This is actually if you saw these black packrafts, they are expedition packrafts. So they use this 1,000 threads per amount of surface area, so it's quite hard to damage. But these ones are actually like the light standard packraft, so we were a bit worried how it will go, but actually here it is rather fine. So we didn't have any issues even with the lighter packraft. So you can see that Elias's backpack is actually just basically a standard packraft, maybe a little bit bigger. And of course, it's always fun to see in the images when there is even some waves that people tend to disappear from time to time. So each of us had radios. The water did get in some of them, and also the cameras we had, most of them broke this time. So kind of, I don't know whether it's splashing, because Oman was also challenging, but there we didn't have that many issues. So this is our 3 people packraft, but actually we use it like 2 people, and the third person is our food and equipment and water, etc. So it weighs like a small person at the end of the day. So probably the best part of these areas is that there is a lot of small tiny islands again, so camping wasn't really an issue. Also, French people are kind of super chill about camping, so we felt at least safe. And you will see later in one example where it really manifested. This is also around Easter, so it was there were some rabbits running around. It felt like in a movie. We did try our movement socks for the first time in a larger expedition, so that was also nice. And there were a lot of these ancient monuments, etc., which you can access only either by boat or taking a ferry. So it's always nice that you can stop in these small islands where it would be really challenging to stop with a boat, especially with place with such high tides. You just walk out and continue the adventure further. So Anna always uses this skirt, which probably is a good idea. So me and Andra, we actually kind of just feel fine with water getting over us, I guess, or it's also kind of trickier to put it on when you have a 3-person boat. So sometimes you put it half on. But yeah, Anne always uses the skirt. Here you can see we are already trying to reach the 7 islands. So in the map it was up top. So that was our most challenging crossing. It was several kilometers on already in kind of this tide-affected semi-open water. And yeah, it's like if you wouldn't have a satellite communicator, you sometimes only see the wave. So the biggest waves, you, as usual, you don't take the photos of. You kind of try to stay in the boat. But that was quite fun. And mostly, like, we were really happy with how the packrafts performed. It was not a very long expedition. It was 100 and something kilometers, so a few days, probably a week and a half. And here you can see us already reaching the 7 islands. They are like kind of semi-remote nature protection area. So a lot of birds. Here are the Easter bunnies running around, and of course no people, because getting there with traditional boats is quite hard. There are some chartered races, ferries, which kind of launch this specific drop element. So a lot of birds. This is the cooking set that we usually use. So these wind burners are quite great at dealing with wind. And then we kind of come back. It was quite a challenging packrafting to get back to the mainland. And we set a tent in a camping spot, which is kind of closed for the winter, but there was like a place where you can just set up. And in the morning, we see like there's a person, he's like, "Hi, do you want breakfast?" And it was like probably one of the best mornings we have had in tent, where you get them breakfast in bed. And then we continued further. Elias went back to airport because he only had a few days to packraft with us. I think he did a very long walk, which was almost longer than the packraft itself to reach the train, but with the boat itself. And here are some of these little buildings you can visit when you are packrafting around. Like we did have some issues in some cases to turn around the packraft, so we're thinking maybe we would build the next one smaller. But we ended up keeping the full length because it's just so convenient to have all the gear with you, and this extra 1 or 2 kilogram probably is not that crazy. So this packraft weighs, when it's deflated, around 9 kilograms, depending if you have these inflatable seatings or not. And this is basically how the packraft adventure itself looked. So it was quite windy, so we had to curve a lot of times. So you can see here's the Elias fighting the wind. You can see the Garmin watch saying that I had a stressful day, so it was extra stressful. And these are these muddy plains where you kind of sometimes get stuck. And then there is already like rain, wind, sun, all of the elements together. And this is a little bit how we kind of go around with these bags. So maybe we took a little bit of too much food, because in France, looking back at it, there were so many nice cafes and restaurants. With packraft, it's also easy to kind of stop somewhere. It's not hard to take the boat out of the water. So a fun way to go. And here's Elias preparing back to the train. So yeah, and this is how it was from the 360 camera. So this is the city where we started in Lannion. So this is 10 meters high sloped area, and you put down a packraft because the tides change 2 times a day. You basically have to run to get something, and the water already comes to the boat. So it's almost like real time. You can see how quickly the water goes up and down in these tide intensive times. So here we are packrafting in the evening. This area in the river was so calm, and when you get out in the sea, of course, it gets quite tricky quite quickly. So here we are kind of trying to get our bearings, and we are aiming to curve around the coastline. And basically, in some cases, we just couldn't paddle like we would paddle, but we stay on the same time. So what you do is you hug these islands, and you tactically kind of choose a route where you can packraft. So here you can still hear some wind, but when we are just a little bit further after the island, actually the wind becomes calmer. And when you think about that, maybe you have seen this famous image where there's a swimmer who's swimming over English Channel, and it looks like a curved graph. So it's also a thing you have to think, like when water comes back and when it goes forward. So a lot of mental calculation to keep on track. But they actually were quite on track. So like there weren't really major points. There was one point at the end where we were like, hey, if we timed it a little bit more wrong, we would have shot past the islands. But it's lucky that there are a lot of them, so even if you miss by one, there's always the next island. And of course, the most probably dangerous part, not from like drowning or falling over, is the fact that if you miss time, like crossing this type of area, for example, you need to walk in mud with a boat, sometimes for several kilometers. There were some crossings which we need to do, so we just carry the boat. But in this case, it was always like just a few hundred meters, so we didn't deflate the boats. But yeah, these areas here, it's really tricky. If you don't time it right, you can end up sitting in a mud pit, and it's really hard. Like Anna in the finish tried to get out, and like she was all brown and covered with dirt. So here we are trying to get to these 7 islands. We are listening to a podcast, which sometimes helps to do when you have a long monotonous packrafting area. And the weather turned a bit, so while we were on island, it was not maybe a full storm, but it was quite windy, so we're really hoping the wind will turn back. And luckily, when we went back, the wind actually was on our back, and we could almost like chill and allow the wind to carry us like a small sailboat. And here is a shot from these islands themselves. So like a lot of birds, everything is covered with poop, of course, so everywhere you go. But quite natural and beautiful. And this is when we are going back and trying to get to the mainland from the 7 islands archipelago. Here you can see from the top. Yeah, this is the last time our camera worked, so it's documented after that. It was damaged, like too much salty air. Maybe it's just, a cumulative trauma from all the expeditions, and every expedition you get exposed more and more to the salty air and water. So in hikes it's a bit easier, but when you packraft, if you want to have good pictures, you almost have to sacrifice some gear. But yeah, like we really fall in love probably with this open space and just winds and wind, and we felt almost ready for Greenland, but we still decided to first go to Norway, and that will be the next leg of the journey. Here you can see a bit how that came useful later in Greenland, where sometimes we just kind of, if it's too much wind or current, you kind of almost hold against the cliffs. It's like kind of hybrid mountain climbing. And here you see these mud plains, so you have to be quite careful. I think we'll get stuck in this point. Yeah, sometimes it's rocky if you get lucky, but a lot of times, especially in this Brittany area, the coast is quite muddy, and then you are really need to look out for the current changes. And here you can see the full route as it was recorded, so quite close to what we were expecting. We were actually surprised because there was quite a lot of wind, so we almost managed to stay on track. And you can see these kind of on the land. We reached there, we just go to a cafe or restaurant, especially when it was raining a lot. And then this is the islands where we almost get blown away. And then we finished here instead of the harbor, because in harbor it was basically unwalkable amount of mud at that point, so a little bit shorter than originally planned. And the trip from Sweden to Norway was the first long distance expedition. So like these ones were long, but they were like week or two. Like Oman was 2 weeks. France was a week and a half. And here we were like, okay, let's do a month-long expedition and try to go from Gothenburg to Norway, to Oslo. The area itself was quite good. Like it's developed. There were some small cafes along the way, and for Norwegians and also for people in Sweden. A lot of these islands have more boat infrastructure than car or vehicle infrastructure, but we also never knew like if the wind will not be too strong against us. And also it was the first time when we would have to do with packrafts like a serious distance, which is close to 500 kilometers. So the interesting point actually is that we did several routes, which we do quite a lot when we plan the adventures. So basically there's, for example, one route that goes out along these rocks. And in some cases, we also make like one route that goes inside. So we kind of never know if we will follow it exactly, but at least we have planned some routes so we don't get stuck while we are on water. So we know that we actually can get through these places. So it's a lot of checking on satellite. Of course, when you do the satellite map planning, you never know if it was done during high tide or low tide. So there is some guesstimation in that in. And here we have arrived at the starting point. Elias is still with his not expedition packraft. That is probably the last time he after this trip he said he will also get the durable packraft. So here we put the packrafts in the water, like kind of we already feel experienced. We just start packrafting instantly. It's Elias's third or fourth trip with us. So like we also did some trips in Latvia with packrafts especially. So he's gaining some speed, and at some point he's like talking to me in radio. He's like, "Hey, Mattis, what's the correct amount of pressure for a packraft?" I'm like, I don't know, like 2 psi maybe or something like that. It's written on the boat. You can check. He's like, oh, okay. And then he packrafts for a few minutes, and he's like, does 2 psi mean that I can touch the boat and it kind of goes in? I'm like, no, it definitely shouldn't. So I don't know if you can see in this image, like this image probably here. But, so yeah. yeah, Elias was deflating very fast. We had to quickly find a coast where you can get out. So there we were lucky, like there wasn't like a lot of steep rocks, but it's also one of the reasons why we always have this kind of one extra place in the boat. So it's also for food, of course, but the idea is like if one boat gets some issues, then we can kind of put people in our large center HQ boat. And the first part, like that, the Sweden part had lower islands, so it was quite easy to get out almost everywhere. But as we get more deeper in Norway, the cliffs started to get higher and quite high, quite close to the border. There was some very rainy and stormy day at some point. We kind of got used to it. We just packraft, and there's like this, and we look back, and there is this police boat. And they're like, "Hey guys, what are you doing? It's storm outside." And we're like, "No, like we are training for Greenland." So they're like, "Okay," and then we go forward, and then I like try to take a photo of Elias, and sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't work because it gets lower and lower. But yeah, like this was the only time we have packrafted, even in Greenland, where like you kind of feel safe because you start to get to know the current. But when we read up on this place, like the sea that goes between Norway and Sweden, they always say that the currents are very unpredictable. But we went through English Channel and we thought, okay, that was unpredictable. But that actually was predictable because when it goes back and forth. But here, the ground is very close and very like kind of broken apart. And what happened for us, basically, Elias at one point says, "Hey guys," like basically there is a wave, like a rogue wave, it bumps on the edge. I never thought that a packraft can be flipped over, but we literally had a point where, like in a Tokyo drift, we were like on the very edge, like it was like 1 more millimeter and me and Andrea would be in the water. And yeah, it's unfortunately not on camera, but yeah, I really felt that. I was like, wow. So yeah, like probably the rogue waves is something that you always have to watch over, and even when listening to a podcast, you kind of have to be alert because you really get in this rhythm, like you have this blue therapy, and even if it's raining, but you're enjoying yourself, it's easy to miss some moment. So probably the most challenging part when we were in Åland Islands, there were mostly no sailboats and it was pretty calm. So here in Norway and Sweden, it's a very popular tourist area. So you can see that every place there is like these sailboats, and they like drilled or knocked these steel nails in the rock to secure their boats. And basically, like you can see here in a drone, that like every island in every side, like there's a boat, there is some sailboats, and you have to go around and kind of try to look for a place where a sailboat can get through, and then you can get some good beaches. Like for example, these ones are really bad for sailboats because you can't get that close, but for us they were perfect. And then you can just chill in the water and get soaked in the blue therapy. Of course, like it's Norway and Sweden, so we get more soggy, and like if in Oman we mostly had rocks. So here there was some swampy places, and you have to be careful how you position the tents. So here we are, like working one day from the tent or watching a movie, and this is already near the border. So another thing is that every island has, not every, but a lot of islands have a lot of sheep. So sometimes you sit down, maybe you go to check Instagram or WhatsApp, and then you pick up your head, and there's like a boat, not a boat, but this sheep in your arm, and trying to get some food or something. So that is always fun. And then quite close to the border, we said goodbye to Elias, who had to run back home to work again. So he couldn't spend that much time with us. And we went further in Norway. So it was actually quite a hard crossing, so there was a lot of wind. So we changed the route a bit and got in, and also like a lot of rain started pouring. Probably one of the times where you see this little yellow thing, which is in every packrafting trip. That's like how you get water out of the boat if it gets too wet. And here you can see in the morning when you try to dry everything out after quite a wet crossing. And that was an interesting beach because on satellite it looked like a really good beach for humans, but we didn't know that it's a beach for cows apparently. So in the morning we go past, and all of these cows are looking at you and judging you. So here we are going even further and approaching the kind of area where we entered the Oslo. It was quite stormy. One of these nights was the biggest storm in that area, so we stayed in a hotel, which we sometimes do if it's really, really bad. But overall, just the infrastructure and being there, I think from all of the trips, this felt like it's, of course, we kind of joked because you go to these piers and there's a sailboat, there's another sailboat, and I'm like, let me just come with our packraft and go to these cafes and restaurants. But it was quite nice because if you go with a normal boat, you always have to pay this boat parking tax, etc. But with packrafts, you just take it out of the water and you kind of can access the amenities and pay for the restaurants, but you don't need to pay for reserving the place on the pier. So the cafes were quite good to work at. So this was one of those trips where we were away, but we were kind of still working, which you have to do if you want to do month-long expeditions. And remote work when you sail is a little bit tricky with these packrafts, so you have to plan around weather a bit. So this is one example of a perfect street. You see, like, there's no cars everywhere because every person just arrives with their boat, and it's so nice. Like, the human scale is so fun. And also, of course, like, just the rocks you can see as closer as we go to Norway, they get higher. We still have a dream to go to the very north of the Norway with a packraft someday, but that would probably be even more challenging. And in one of these canals, we kind of packraft, and then we look back, and there's this old big ship going through. It was quite nice. At the very end, or closer to the end, Anna came back, so her studies ended. And Anna always worries when he had to cross like in Oslo, there's these big ferries that kind of go to there, and there are some crossings where you needed to cross to get to a cafe or restaurant. Then it can be a little bit intimidating, so you kind of look very far away. You check on Google Maps. Actually, it's quite easy to just see what route they take because they go on a fixed route. And although it looks that it will go over, you just always know where it will be and your position against it, and you can calculate how far your boat gets if you don't take too much risk. But yeah, like this, you can even see here like the pattern of the waves. It's kind of so broken up, so you never know from which side you will get hit. So from all of the packrafting expeditions we did, this Northern Sea was very, how to call it, surpriseful. So here you can also see how Anna and Andra is fighting the wind. But there are also some nice and calm moments. A lot of wildlife when you get farther out. So we didn't go to the very most remote areas in the archipelago. We kind of tried to keep closer to the mainland, but still far away enough that it's not that much population. So I don't know which is this bird, but yeah, it was just sitting there. Probably like, felt like they were not afraid of humans, probably because there were not that many of them in the areas where we went further. And here we are already quite close to the Norway, and it's one of the, usually everyone tries to make these photos where they beautifully arrange everything, but this is just like we were flying with a drone, checking where we will go further. And that's one of the things, like we do use drones for beautiful pictures, but a lot of times in your packraft, you just check like, hey, how the route forward looks. And then this is, I think, a good way to see how you kind of organize and dry everything when you're out. So you have like your sleeping stuff, you can check your water. This is where all we kind of put our batteries and drones. There's, of course, our beautiful movement socks, and then all of the t-shirts and everything else kind of drying out and in the sun. We also saw the northern lights, and here is some video from the police boat approaching, not police, but security boat. And we visited Edward Monk's villa, so that was quite nice. Just packrafted around along and went to see that too. Yeah, that type of wave got us almost flipped later. So the Coast Guards knew what they were saying about the danger. And that's basically the preparation. So we felt ready to go to Greenland and do our most challenging trip yet. It's very interesting that my smartwatch says it's been a demanding day, so almost like in the adventures. But of course, we did a lot of research before we went, and one of the most worries we had was about polar bears. And there are some polar bears, so almost every local had met something or heard someone who had met a polar bear, and they even told us, like, here they went to, like, this is the path the polar bear took, and then they monitored it from the satellite. But the main danger, I already ran ahead a little bit, actually was mosquitoes. So we knew that there could be mosquitoes, and they're like these midges that are even smaller than mosquitoes that can get through everywhere. But yeah, that you will see in the photos later. That's just foreshadowing. But what we did, like we couldn't know with the route which parts of the water will be frozen and which will not be frozen. So we used this Copernicus browser where you can kind of look at somewhat real-time satellite data, and we just put these images on the Facebook group. Of course, you always have to check the wind and clouds, so not always the satellite passes at the time when it's actually useful. Also, the resolution is not as high as Google Maps, but you can get some good shots and kind of understand the general situation of ice and snow. So we did it a lot also when we do like mountain expeditions, like in Iceland. So you kind of see like, hey, is this pass crossable or not? So if you do wild expeditions, definitely check it. This is the part where we that's the most annoying part probably. You just have to download satellite maps to many devices. So we use Garmin Basecamp, and basically there's a limit how large section you can select for one download, because Garmin Basecamp is built, I don't know, before I was born, and it's not been updated that much. And yeah, it's like, it took like a week to just download everything, although it was 30 gigabytes, like not that many. Oh yeah, that's also like they have a maximum amount of memory card, so it's coded in this older style of memory allocation. But yeah, basically, we and it's good that we did two of them, because we again had one satellite device that malfunctioned. So when you are in salty water and it's your main navigation unit, it's always good to have a backup. So the good thing is you also can do it on a mobile phone, so it starts to get better. There's this Garmin Explorer app I will show later. But yeah, this is probably the most important part, because every time you want to see where you can camp, or maybe it's too windy to launch a drone, you always know you have at least some satellite information. So the route plan was basically that we start in Nuuk, which is the capital of Greenland. While we actually felt ready to start this adventure, was the one, of course, we trained, but the other part was that there was news that it was before Trump, so we went first, but there was news that they launched finally a year ago this first public airport, and actually it's not that expensive. It used to be very challenging and expensive to get there, but you just fly there in a few hours. It's like any location in Europe. It just means that when you are there, you need to be a bit more prepared. And also, weirdly, although it's Denmark, the data plans, they still want you to get their data plans, so that's something to keep in mind. And with data plans, it's like you look these data plan maps, and I was thinking, is it an error? There's just a dot around the city that's like 2 kilometers big, but it ended up being like that. You just have data in the city, and you still see the city, you still see the cars and people, but the data just disappears. And there's one tower who powers. There's like, if there's 300 people, they have 5G. Like it was like, if they have 100 people, they have 4G. There's even like a tier list for these little towns in Greenland. And this was our alternative plan. We thought if we do it quickly, we might also go to the Atomic, which is further up north. And the first part, Elias, again, of course, joined us because he was training so hard all the time. And the plan with Elias was to go to Kapasilit and back. So Kapasilit is kind of this one of the towns which actually can be reached by hiking. So if you ever go there, you have to fight the midges, but otherwise there are even ultra marathons. So there's no trail. It means like you have to do your own path in a way, but it's reachable by foot. And I would say it's probably quite a unique experience. So the next part, of course, we prepared by putting a big buy list, everything that needs to be updated or refreshed. So we did take extra blankets, like there are these really good ones from Sufit, and they really were useful. And of course, like flashlights and boats and solar panels. But this is like the first planning you do, so kind of we call it a rough draft. And then when you actually not need to start packing, and that's already like several weeks before the trip. So I think you never are packing that hard like this, because kind of for some trips in Europe, you're like, I'll just, before going to the plane, I'll grab some stuff and put it in a backpack and it'll be fine. So here we really kind of, because we knew that our weight is limited, so each person gets one carry-on and one this bag that you can put in the storage. And that bag is probably like 10 kilograms. It's already used by the equipment, like safety vest and boat and everything else. So we kind of did a priority list for each item. The more green dots it has, the more kind of crucial it is to take. And then it's kind of easy to see what to throw out when you need to pack. And then, of course, everyone can mark what they have, what they didn't have. So a lot of neoprene gear. So this is the first trip where we actually took neoprene gear. So every other trip, even the winter Packrafting in this Italy, we just did with the normal clothes, like outdoor clothes. But here we did really buy some neoprene, which really helped. And also, of course, like you write down everything, even the USB-C cables, everything, just to know that you definitely have everything that you need, and you also don't take extra stuff that you don't need. And this is how it looked when Anna packed it beautifully on a table. And yeah, here we are already in the Nuuk. So we took the furthest kind of gas station that is reachable by taxi from the airport. And the first night we stayed in the Nuuk itself. And then I think we spent checking and packing like 3 hours or something like that, like a really long time. We even went for for a meal and came back just to check that everything is packed, because that is kind of the tricky thing. When you pack for airport, you have to put electronics in one bag, and that for every bag. And when you pack for adventure, you have to kind of repack everything because you have a different logics where everything goes. This is the first kind of fjord where we went in. We didn't have any ice yet. We did see some humpback whales, so that was really nice. We thought we will keep seeing them every day, but that was also the last time we saw them, so that's Elias happily checking out the whales. So we didn't get really good shots of them. You can book these tours where you drive closer. We tried to chase them, but they were definitely faster than our small packrafts, unfortunately. The first night was actually raining already, so and also you can see that we start using these nets. In the first day, we still sometimes have photos where we are smiling with the nets, but this is lies. So we just quickly took them off and then put them back on. But yeah, we saw these midges everywhere, so that was quite a challenge. So either the wind was so strong that you couldn't even, breathe without the net, or you always had to. And it's crazy because even in moderately strong wind, these midges still can kind of, swarm around you. And keep you occupied. And it's also kind of, we tested the new radios, because before, the ones we used before started glitching. So this is an American brand. It was quite okay. So here we are already deeper in the first fjord. So we are going to Kapasilit. And this is what you see in Greenland, that a lot of times the cliffs are quite steep, especially in the fjord areas. The other route, which was coastal, technically should have been easier. But the beautiful part with this route is that although the cliffs are steep, you also have some ice and fresh water, which was really nice, because in the other part we thought that there will also be some cliffs and runaway water, but it was much trickier to get it. So here we are already halfway in the first fjord, and this is how the camp looked like. So these are some of, there's not a lot of them. So every day we basically had 2 or 3 beaches, and we tried to do 15 kilometers, depending on where the wind goes. And if you get to this beach, and it's really nice, if you don't get to that beach, and you have to kind of climb up the slope and try to find somewhat level place where to sleep and set up your tent. Here, I'm watching some show on Netflix or working, and I don't remember, probably a show. I even remember what I watched here. And you're you have to do it through the net, because you can. And when you eat, you also kind of, you juggle your spoon around the net and try to eat like that. Even sometimes in the kayak, when packraft. So if you are packrafting close to the edge, then the mosquitoes come to you. But the best part about packrafting in these places is that the moment you kind of go further away, they disappear, and then you just kind of can feel chill. You can sit in the boat and enjoy the weather, and paddle ahead, and there's no mosquitoes bothering you and midges. But yeah, if we had to hike, it would probably be quite tricky, and you just would have to live constantly with this net. So sometimes you would be sunbathing, for example, and you would still have the net over the head. But these midges, they also bite in the legs, and my main mistake was that I didn't use gloves, so my hands got bitten by the midges, and at some point I really started developing some how do you call them, the damage that it was hard to even paddle. So I hope I would go next again to Greenland, that would be a point you would really consider to really prepare for midges. And here, these are the solar chargers. So here we did use the solar chargers a lot. Basically, these ones charged one power bank. It was a sunny day, because in Greenland, at least in first part, we got lucky. We got a lot of sun. And given that it's summer, it also means that sun almost never goes down. So it just gets a little bit mistier, but it doesn't get dark. So we basically could charge every time we stopped with the packrafts. This is some thinking which you have to do when there's no flat places. So kind of, you will see in a video later that you go up and kind of try to find a flatter place. Here's Anna and Elias packrafting. So with these small packrafts, we don't use chairs, so not to add weight, but you use your bag as a kind of impromptu chair or the mattress. But yeah, overall, the deeper you go into the fjord, the more sunlight warms up the air. It's also less wind, and you can also we started swimming every day. It almost felt like a tropical country. The water gets really green and nice. I think in some places in Norway it also looks like that, but just the mountains are sharp, and there's I would say really, really great views. And I don't know how they do this ultramarathon thing there because we tried some trails and they were really, really hard. But basically, this is where they run. They just go over these passes and kind of curve around. And then we had a surprise, like we were quite close to this first crossing where we need to cross and carry the packrafts over because these fjords are not connected. We met some people on the coast. Anna met them because we really wanted to get some fresh water. Like we did have this ice water, but for a while it was hard to access it because sometimes you have the water, but the bushes are covering it and you kind of need to go really high up to refill the water. And in this case, we met a Christian camp. Like they just had a summer camp with children there. It was in the complete middle of nowhere, so they just reached it by a boat. He had a really good meal there because Elias didn't take that much food as he hoped. So maybe he will tell you later about his dreams about the food and resupplies. But so we had a really good meal there. We showed them our map. The interesting part is in Greenland, there is so few people. We went back to Nuuk later and we just sit in a cafe. And they're like, there are a few cafes in Nuuk. It's like, probably not as Riga. Maybe as we were joking, it's like Heinzpils. And we are sitting next to this guy. We're like, hey, like, it's you. It's like, yeah, like, not that many people in that city. So we met them again. And this is how our campsite looks. So when you get a flat space, it was pretty nice. And this was the first time when we had to do the crossing. So we did have to do several crossings. So this route was mostly water, but there were some places where you need to carry the boats. And like the backpacks were really heavy. Like I think one of Elias' backpack was probably, was it 50 kilograms?
Yeah, it was 50.
It was 50 kilograms, it's just crazy. So you kind of put everything in because we had a lot of supplies, to last for the whole trip. And also the thing is that it's still Greenland. It gets cold at night, so you also have some winter clothing. You have the neoprene gear. It doesn't always, maybe dry out that quickly, especially if it's a rainy day and you get unlucky. So here you see, you just kind of, it felt like the crossing between the water points, which is like 3 kilometers or 4 kilometers, felt harder than the whole several day trip getting to them to that place. So here you can see us, like we are walking, but still with these mosquito nets. And here we have reached the Kapasilit. So after Kapasilit in the map you saw, this was the region where we worried about, but maybe we will not be able to cross because there is ice. So we flew as high as we could with the drone, and there is like this overpass where you again have to climb like a mountain and get over to the ice shell. We saw that it is pretty covered with ice, but we were like, hey, let's still try. Let's still try packrafting there. So we went over, and then this is still shots from the previous night. At first we had to camp, so we get there, and it was quite sloped. And the interesting thing is this camp, usually you just get in your tent and it gets warm, but here, like, although we couldn't see the ice, you can feel like it's like when you keep your fridge open and the cold air goes out. So we are sleeping and the ice is like several kilometers over the ridge, but you feel the ice is there, and it reminds you with this cold wind. The next day was again sunny, so we actually did a lot of winter swimming there, like the ice blocks. So these ones are the safe ice blocks. So usually if they are floating, they recommend not to get close to them, especially if you're in a little rubber boat. But here they are basically anchored on the floor, so they are relatively stable. So we did a bit of swimming. We had the boat in this Kapasilit city, some Pepsi Cola, then we put it in the ice, and it's like like in a fridge in the warm day. I think we spent the whole day just trying to find some route through these ice blocks, but it was pretty clear that we are not getting through. So mostly it's just, like a fun labyrinth, like it would be the world's best adventure game to navigate through these blocks. But unfortunately, we had to kind of go over back again and try to curve around the edge of this ice block part. And the interesting thing is we thought that there will be less ice because it was one of the warmest summers they have had. And that's like why we were swimming so much, etc. But actually, all this heat just made the more ice broke off of the main ice shell. And that way, basically, so when we actually checked in the satellite images, and they are always delayed because sometimes there's a cloudy day, so usually you get lucky like once in a week to get a good shot. So we looked, it looks pretty good. And then it was still cold, and then it got really warm, and we were like, hey, we are definitely getting through. And all the ice broke off, and it was one of the most ice-full fjord they have had in a few years. So here we are posing with ice, looking again if we can pass through. Probably we could have, but as you get deeper inside, you can get crushed also by these blocks colliding, etc. So we decided that it's probably not a good idea to go through. Also, you never know how long it will take, so it's not that many opportunities to find a water taxi back. So here we are already going back to the place where we launched. did the last photos. This is the largest ice block we found in that area, so it was pretty high. We did think about climbing on them, but yeah, it's probably, even if it's locked in, it's better not to do it. But yeah, some locals, they just take these motorboats and they go to them and they jump from them in the water. So they are the Greenlandic people are crazy. And like we went to some of these cities and we are like wearing 3 jackets, and they are just running there in t-shirts because they just feel like, that's like when you go to Greece in summer, in winter, and you're like there in a t-shirt, you know, and all the Greek people are, you know, with a coat, and you're like, oh, it's not that cold, you know, you can go swimming, it's just 15 degrees. So that's how we felt there. Like locals were feeling warm, but we sometimes felt a bit cold. So this is already going back. An interesting point with the ice is like we Elias now has this durable packraft, and we thought that he is safe. So he's just packrafting around. Like we also took his packraft. We even tried to go 2 people in the small packraft because we didn't take the big one here. And we were not really careful with the ice, so if you bump in the ice, it was like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, so we finished this trip, we packed up, we went back to the cafe where we was in this facility village, recharged all the electronics. So this is how you can see the charging part. And again, Elias says in the radio, hey guys, we have a problem. and his packraft had a hole in exactly the same place where the previous packraft had a hole. But our thoughts were that maybe it was ice that scratched it somehow, because we did bump into it a few bits. So while the electronics were charging, we glued it again. So we really hoped to hold. And then we started packrafting forward. There were only a few days left, so we were not sure if we will get back to Nuuk. So Elias kind of spent the last day with us packrafting forward, hoping his packraft will hold, and then he would packraft back again. So here you can see when they say city or village, it's usually a generous term. So it's just these few buildings connected by some heating, because in winter, of course, it gets really cold. And then this is the most important part in every village. Is this tower on top of it, which gives internet for a few kilometers. When you had the internet, it was really good, and you open the WhatsApp, it's like ding, 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 ding. But the interesting point is that, like, if we had some problems in Oman with WhatsApp, then it was just WhatsApp calls. But here we actually lost a lot of messages. So our thoughts were maybe because like it's longer than like several days, like it was a week or maybe a little bit more, than we were fully offline, which basically meant that some messages we never received them. And as people who basically live our whole digital lives on WhatsApp, that was probably the most traumatic part of this trip. Anyhow, so now it's the day where we are leaving Capasilit, so we did resupply a lot because we needed to reach quite a far point to camp. We couldn't really reach it. There was a little bit, a wind, and this route was kind of long. We were a little bit tired from all the ice packrafting. So it was already dark, and we just set up the tent in like the biggest bushes ever. And it's like we were so frozen. We set up the tent. This is already in the morning, but like almost our hands froze. In the morning, we both with Elias let fly our drones, do the shots. And we check, and it's like 100 meters closer. There's like the perfect, ground, like a real camping spot. And that's the only one in like 10 or 15 kilometers where you can really easily access it without planning too far. So this is the whole coastline. And we set up our camp in this pixel here, and just a few meters farther, it would have been a really nice one. But yeah, you'll have to, when you sleep on these bushes, like you can't touch the ground, so the tent is kind of floating on like sticks and sharp needles, etc. Here we, like last day, we did a few kilometers together with Elias, and this is like, you can see this, we're kind of curving around this ice mass, so we did have to paddle quite a lot through this ice. It did get bigger, so at some points, like, it was pretty high. This is the last time we saw Elias. We said goodbye to him in Greenland. Now we see him here. And then he packrafted back. So we had our radios. Like, these radios were quite good. I think for a few kilometers, we could still reach him. And we went back to Greenland, Nuuk capital, and tried to finish our loop. And the interesting part is that this last fjord, it was like almost all the time we had to packraft against the wind. And in some cases, it gets really, really hard. So the first night, we got quite a good camping spot. And the interesting point is that in the evening, it felt like the ice was too dense to get through. But in the morning, it cleared a bit. So here we are kind of setting up the camp. Like we use these Z-Pack stands. They are one wall tents, but very light. And it's very easy to set them up without like kind of extra sticks. So in the previous like trips, like a longer time ago on Åland Island, we sometimes had to find the rocks and stuff like that to secure them. But these ones, we just put in some heavy stuff in the tent, and it stayed where it was. Maybe we used like a few sticks, and it was quite windy some nights. But usually we just found an area that is sheltered because there is a lot of steep places in these fjords. It was a bit harder in the open water later. So this is the morning already. The ice had cleared a bit. This is the first day we actually saw live animals, because in Greenland, like you walk there and there's a lot of times there's just like, like some bones and some, some animal hides thrown on the ground. It feels really wild. And so this is the first time we saw some wild alive deers. And this is how we charge the drone. So actually we were able to charge the drone also with the solar panels. And here we are going further to the Nook. So the trick with the water taxis is they're really expensive, and you have to schedule them quite a while in forward. So it's like very easy to get into the thousands of euros. So maybe you want to go 100 kilometers, it would cost like 1,000, 2,000 euros to do the booking. And then you have to guarantee that you will take it, so they wouldn't just go out and, there is no one. And you have to wait sometimes like 3-4 days to get to that. But we did saw it quite a lot, so it feels like people are taking them and doing tours, of course. This is already the evening, one of the few times when it was really, really calm. So in Greenland, we didn't really risk packrafting at night, but sometimes you would feel tempted because the water got calmer, usually in the morning or at night. It wasn't tonight in the first few weeks, but as we get closer to the finish, it did get darker as we started summer, a little bit after midsummer. So here we are getting closer to Nook, one of the last campsites, and we just had to do one last crossing, but the wind was so strong that we actually had to all three climb in one packraft. We deflated the other packraft, and then all of us basically non-stop packrafted like full speed just to clear that one point. So it's like 1 or 2 kilometers, but you have to really push it to get through. And here, like, is one of these places. And then this is actually Nook already, and you can see that we thought maybe we take a hotel, but it was like a few days to reach this. We wanted to get to this farther island, so we just took a good dinner. And we camped on the edge of Nook, and then we went along the coastline. We didn't get that many water because we thought in the previous trip it was quite good and everyone was a little bit tired and we forgot about it. And here, as you can see, there are no mountains, so it was much trickier. We did manage to find some running crews, and we had a filter which helped, so you can filter out the water. But like this place was really nice for camping because there was just like any island was flat. But the water was a bit trickier to procure, and this is like this crossing, which also was very hard. So with these crossings, which are usually like a few kilometers, the first thing is, like you do these few kilometers, somewhere on the farthest edge already you start losing the network, although you can still see the city. And then, of course, like crossing these open areas, you do feel the wind, so it is a windy place. So here we are going through this kind of coastal area. So it was colder, of course, because the water didn't heat that much up. Also, the days were a little bit shorter. One of the most challenging thing was that there were like these, like in France, there were these tidal currents. So water goes up and down, and it starts running very quickly through these channels. And like the worst thing is, like some of these channels, because of the geography, they run against you both in the up and down tide. So we were like, hey, this current is very strong. Let's just make dinner and then wait for the tide to change. And the tide changes, but the current still goes against you. And the interesting part is that the first people who discovered Greenland, they sometimes thought it's an archipelago just because of this. Like even when you approach it from the ocean, there's always like it's full with islands, but inside deeper it starts to connect, and there's a mainland part. So these locals, they just take these motorboats and they almost do like a rally through these channels, and then it was pretty fun. And then when they see us like going through these narrow places against the current with our packraft full speed, they're literally sometimes they're like, what? Who is packrafting here? So it's like we couldn't. I think again, like in Oman, we find 1 or 2 guys who have done some expeditions, but it's not like a normal thing to go packrafting in Greenland. So like a lot of locals were a little bit surprised to see us there. And this is how these channels look. This is these camping sites. So when the sun was up and it wasn't raining, the sun was really good. And we kind of stopped worrying about the foxes after Oman. So we again started camping without the tent a little bit, or like, get free. And then one evening, we see, oh, beautiful foxes. So we take some photos of the foxes. Looked good. And then we set up down. We start, eating. We put the drone to charge because there's still sun up. And then I see the drone falls down. I'm like, how can it fall down if it was on a flat ground? I go there, the drone is just sitting on the ground, but in a different place. I look at it and it like smells bad. I'm like, no way. It's like, why? But yeah, so we can just recommend that DJI drones apparently are also pee-proof because it's still continued working. But yeah, it was really hard to clean it, so just like in Oman, the history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. Here is the culprit. Like the fox just went away like 100 meters and stared at us. And it's interesting that these Greenlandic people believe these fox spirits, and then probably it was the fox spirit, who knows. And this is the furthest city that we reached. We thought maybe to go a bit further, but it was again one of the craziest storms. So we kind of sheltered in a very, very small cove. Like we packrafted quite a while around to like really, really look, because here it wasn't really a town to get a hotel. Like, of course, you could probably go and find some person and try to stay with them. But we decided, like, so far our tent was pretty durable, not like in Iceland from previous story. So on this trip, did our tent break? I think it didn't, right? Yeah. Also, Elias tent didn't break. I think it didn't. Yeah. So yeah, we set up quite well and we survived this storm. And in the morning it was again clear. So we did like a tour through the city. Walked around it a bit. The pier was really nice. So this is the place where all the children run around in t-shirts, although it's like 7 degrees outside, but they just kind of feel native. This is the place where we set up the camp without the tent at first. So probably, yeah, like I really like sleeping without a tent, but sometimes like with mosquitoes, you can protect yourself with a net, but if it's foxes and the stuff like that, then like I can tell you, washing out the fox pee from this sleeping bag is not a nice activity to do in a cold water. But if you don't do it, it's also not nice to go to sleep. Yeah, so their houses are quite colorful, so it's easy for them probably to recognize. And yeah, we really like this town, and like the idea is to someday in future continue and go all around the Greenland. Probably could be quite tricky as it gets colder up north. So this is relatively south of Greenland, and as Nuuk is in a warmer climate, but we will see where we go. And this is us already in the not water taxi, but a bus. So the buses are relatively cheap. It's like 50, 80, 100 euros to go from town to town, but they get booked out very quickly. So it's like, you go in Latvia to some, rural town, and it also like, not every day the bus goes, and sometimes it's full, sometimes it's completely empty. So here in summer it gets booked out very quickly, and the capacities don't always react. I suppose maybe over time, as this was the first year the airport was up, maybe it will change. This was the last iceberg we saw on our way back, and because in Nuuk it was rather clear. And here is how it looked from the 360 camera. So this is the first port where we launched. So all of the Nuuk is basically just these apartment buildings and some industrial complexes. So here we are going into the fjord already. On the right side there were these humpback whales. So this is like how these camping sites look. A lot of time there is these grasses which are pretty slippery, so you have to be really careful when you get out. No sea urchins though, so that was nice. So here we are already checking out the camping site. But yeah, like this is a good place which is sheltered from the wind, but you can get quite unlucky. And again, like we go here, we set up the camp, I'm looking, oh, there's a rock. Oh no, it's a skull of an animal. So you really like, like in popular places, it would probably already be taken, but here they're just like lying, like almost every camp I found some animal parts, because it's just like completely wild and tamed and still not populated by tourists. So of course didn't meet any tourists on our trip in this section, but there were some days like you just see a boat going further to some fishing huts or some places where they work. So here we are going over the first pass and kind of carrying these heavy packrafts. So yeah, it was one of these days which was very windy, so we thought that maybe we will go faster with the packrafts, but I think we ended up walking 1 or 2 kilometers. We're like, no, let's go back in the water. And this is where we met the Christian camp with these children, which we had a very, very good meal. It's nice to have a normal meal after living off dried food for a few weeks. And this is how we crossed this. And then of course, every crossing you have to walk uphill and downhill. And then this was the part which is quite challenging. So here you can see close up of Andra with the two bags. So you kind of offset the weight. You have 20 kilograms on the back, 20 kilograms on the front, and then yourself in the middle, like a little burrito or taco of weight. And here we are already going forward to the Capacilate, still with Elias. This is how approached Capacilate looked. And here we are already exploring the ice. And yeah, like it's one of these times where you're already tired after a few weeks of expedition, but the views are just so good that you are still enjoying it. This section is where we start going away from Capacilate back to the Nook. So you have the ice, but it's just more, chunky ice, and you kind of have to navigate against it. And like it was quite hard not to get bumped into the ice, but after Elias's issue, we didn't have any issues with kind of breaking the Packrafts with the ice. So probably either we got lucky or maybe just we got unlucky in the first trip, or maybe it was just something else with the Packraft. Interesting, it was always the same place which got broken. So here we are already going to this fjord back to the Nook. It was one of the less windy days. When we closed closer to the Nook, actually, like it was pretty fun because I didn't say Anna and Andra, please hold as possible close to the edge in the fog. So they just went straight and they just trusted that the satellite will guide them. And they were quite faster than me, but I wouldn't do such a big risk. But I meanwhile hugged the thing, but hugged the coast, and then the fog cleared, but the wind started again up. And this is how this was the currents we had to fight. So there were literally several times when we just, we all three are in one Packraft, and you just grab the rocks and push yourself against to get through these coastal areas. It's probably one of the things we are worried about if we would ever try to go around. Either you have to go deeper in the ocean, or if you go these smaller ones, you can get stuck in these currents that go against you. And if in cases when there is no current, it's like the most perfect place to Packraft. It's just small channels, so it feels like you're going fast. But if you end up going in the wrong current, you might have to go like 10-20 kilometers back and lose like 2 days of progress. But if you go in the open water, if it's no wind, it's good. But if the wind starts pushing, I didn't touch that point that much, but like in some cases, like in the English Channel, there are cases where you don't control the boat. You just can't control like a few degree points where it's like flying a hot air balloon. Those with us who have been in a hot air balloon trips, that's how sometimes Packrafting feels if you are in a wind and open area. So you are more kind of following the wind. So this is the entrance point where we reach this further village. Here we meet the locals, say hi to them. So yeah, I think locals are always nice, especially in these remote places. They are less nice in places that have over-tourism, I suppose, where everyone goes, but here they just usually are happy to see some new faces, as not that many people reach it. What the locals do, they basically hunt or fish. So you go in the airport, and there's like a person carrying meat, and the blood is slushing on the ground, and there is a attendant going after him and cleaning the blood from the ground. But the airport is super modern, so it's like really interesting to see this kind of clash of talents. And here we can see us already going back to the Nook with the ferry. And in the last day, we actually did a trip to try hiking. So we went hiking around the Nook area. I think Elias also did hiking. And you can hike, you just need this mosquito net. Probably not, like that's the problem with warm weather. The legs are open and these midges do bite them. But yeah, so you don't have the trails mostly. Like there are some places that are, if you follow GPS trail, you can see the trail and some starts of trails, but a lot of times to do the loop, you just at some point just have to start walking on the rocks. So this is the trail. If you make it a trail, it is a trail. So kind of climbing the rocks. There are some ice segmentations. So it feels like going to Alps or Italy. But it's a little bit maybe less steep and quite approachable, just a lot of midges, but otherwise like really unbeatable views. It is also really fun to see and look at these areas where maybe we spend 2 days to cross, and then you just can see it with one view and look back at it and think, then like sometimes Packrafting can be really slow. But on average, we did like 15 kilometers a day, so it's less than hiking, but it's still some distance. So on the farthest days, I think the record was maybe 25-30 kilometers. So if you do 30 kilometers, you feel really proud of yourself. Or you get helped by a wind, so that can also happen. not that frequently, but it does happen. In one of the images you maybe saw, we had also like this small sail for the packer, but it didn't really help that much. So we kind of decided that it's a waste of weight and wouldn't probably take it next time with us. So here we're already going back. And the interesting part is like a lot of times you look on Google Maps on these rock formations, and they're just like geologist markers like, hey, these rocks are like the only place on Earth where you actually can see that specific type of rock. And it's still not like probably not a tourist destination, it's just like a scientific marking, but it's really interesting to go through it. And when I was preparing this presentation, I just saw that University of Latvia is doing like a research expedition there, and it's like so interesting that you probably walked in the same place where some, like I literally had, like when I was researching the area, there was one camping site, and I looked, oh, there's a YouTube video, and there's some NASA Jet Propulsion Lab scientists exploring some minerals and discussing like getting shipped in with helicopters in the same place where we camped with our packrafts. So Greenland is a really nice place. And when we are going there, I really recommend this book. It's not like a book maybe to prepare for Greenland, but we were listening to it when we were there. It's called Into the Great Emptiness by David Roberts, and it looks at first explorers who went there to these settlements and how they tried to cross the ice cap. So it's called like the Explorer's Gene, and it's pretty nice book to explore. At least help to kind of understand the history of the place. And there's a really good museum in Nuuk, which you can visit. So what equipment we used? Probably the least useful is flashlights, as it usually was sunny, and the sun was up all day. And at night it was only a few hours and it was dark, and at first it wasn't dark at all, but you still need the light to be visible on water, and when you need the light, then you need it a lot, so we still took them. So we usually take the Nightcore or Phoenix brand. For navigation, we had these satellite communicators, the traditional normal radios, these Rocky Talkies we got recommended by mountain climbers. We used to use the China ones, but yeah, like they are quite convenient, and they are just radios. I don't know what to tell. They work. They were fine. Having a watch is really good because a lot of time these satellite communicators do break. I think we have like in all our expeditions 2 or 3, maybe even 4 has broken. So it's just, of course, like you try to dry them out when you charge it, but then there's like wind, rain, and everything, and they do need to be charged. And we do try to keep them dry, but they do break. The watches have just kept running. But of course, when you are packrafting, it's really hard to check in the watch if you're going the right direction because you're actually paddling and the screen is small. So you still need the satellite communicator. So the cameras is probably the reason why our bags were 40 kilograms and 50 kilograms. So one ten of that is the packrafts themselves. The other stuff is gear, so you can show you these presentations. For the sleeping, we don't really use sleeping bags. We kind of use quilts. So it's like a little bit lighter version. It just means that you get heated up by the sleeping pad and you don't use the underside of the sleeping bag. You kind of save a little bit of weight that way. For the tents, we usually use these tents that are without double walls. So also to save on weight, and for cooking, we don't save on weight. We just use very heavy duty cooking gear. And this was the only time when we actually had some challenge. We did have some either grass or I don't know, or sand get in. So I had to suck it out and like fix it like MacGyver on site. And for a moment we were like, damn, this is it, because we didn't ask Elias to give us the second one. We were like, it's fine. It has like, in all 10 years of adventures, we never have had issue with the gas burner. But in Greenland, if you don't have hot water, it really gets really bad really quickly. So living on granola bars for a week would be terrible. But we did manage to get it working, but it did maybe it was some salt, I don't know, but something got in. But otherwise, it worked really good. The water filter, we didn't use that much, but it was nice to have it. For the charger, it's like probably the most important thing when you are in the city, because the solar charger is good to have, but you can't fully rely on it. You can get unlucky and it's always raining, as it was in Norway or France trips, which are much more rainier. So this charger is just really, it's one of them, but I would just say look for ones that have a lot of ports and really high wattage, as then you can recharge in 1 hour or 2 hours. And if your power bank also is able to receive this energy, it goes very quickly. I'm very, very happy we took the neoprene gear. It's probably obvious for some of you who are more experienced in water tourism, as we usually do hiking. So these were almost all of our packrafting experiences in this presentation. So this was when they're like, let's try neoprene gear, this wonderful material that keeps you warm. So thanks to SoapFit, we were equipped with that. We also use neoprene socks that help with slipping on the rocks, etc. So that was pretty fun. And also these hoodies that kept us warm. And one thing I've always liked I think for 5 years, I go to Ansi's shop, and he's like, Matthias, you need to buy this waterproof place to store your electronics. And I'm like, no, I have a backpack already. Why would I do it? But yeah, you open the backpack and some water splashes in, etc. So this time I took it, and I was really happy because like it's really convenient to just get some stuff out. So probably like we would have more broken electronics if we didn't have these. Because traditional dry bags just help you when you are like kind of in the bag, but this one is very convenient to have a small bag, but it's more like a comfort thing probably. But yeah, I'm happy I finally did that. From apps, these are the most used apps if you look by Android statistics for us. But yeah, of course, WhatsApp, when it worked in 2 times in Oman and Greenland, it didn't work, but usually it works. Strava is very good when you plan the routes. Of course, we didn't use it for navigation, but just, looking at heat maps and seeing where people have gone. The Garmin Explorer is the app that allows you to download